Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Alex. Welcome to NTWC Plus. It is Wednesday, the 7th day of August, well into the meat of the hurricane season. We'll talk about what's happening in the season today, coming up in just a moment. We're going to talk about sustainable and almost hurricane-proof housing today. I think it's going to be a fascinating discussion as we look at how sustainability is turning into strength in a lot of ways. And I think that's going to be a fascinating conversation. We're also going to take you right into the heart of where Debbie is right now. Hurricane Hal, where are you today? Dr. Hal Needham.
Hey, everybody. I'm in Jacksonville, North Carolina, really on the lookout for some of these heavy rains of Tropical Storm Debbie, probably moving in later today and tomorrow.
Fascinating. We'll get back to you in just a little bit, and hopefully in a little while, Ed Piotrowski is going to join us from Myrtle Beach on the Carolina coast, where they've been really feeling the brunt of Debbie as well. So we'll get to him in just a little while. But without further ado, let me say good morning and welcome to Mr. Bill Reed. How are you, Bill?
I'm doing fine. Yourself?
Doing terrific. Back in the saddle again. It's good to be back after a couple of weeks away. Good to see you guys again. Good to have these conversations again.
Yeah, we had a little factoid here. We had Beryl exactly a month ago today, and yesterday the tree debris were removed from our street.
That took a month.
And people were complaining about it. And I said, this is going according to plan, folks. The same with the power outages. We're beating up the power companies, but there's only so many manpower trucks to go out and restore the system, and they know how long it takes. So wait till you get the Cat 4 in here, folks. It's going to be a whole different animal.
Yet another reason to remove the phrase just from our vocabulary, just a category, just a tropical storm. Before we get started, let's thank our sponsors who are here once again with us today. We appreciate each and every one of them. USAA, the South Padre Island Convention and Visitors Bureau, Weather Boy, the Weather Company, and Weather Call. Anything with weather in the name, they're part of what we do. And we appreciate that because weather is what we're all about here at NTWC Plus. I guess, Bill, let's get to the tropical update. And if Ed joins us eventually, we'll bring him in as needed because I know he's swamped, so to speak, in the Carolina coast right now. So what do you have for us, Bill?
Okay, yeah, let me share the screen here, and I'll get started on our latest Justa, as I hear people talking about. Okay, there we go. This is a wide view of the Atlantic this morning. Debbie, which we'll talk at length about, is up here unwinding off the coast of the Carolinas. You can still see a great plume of tropical moisture coming across the Gulf Stream and coming into the Carolinas on it. This is the tropical wave that earlier was sparking some interest for possible development downstream. That interest has waned. It's only a 10% risk, and it's confined to the Bay of Campeche. It looks like it's going to take all its moisture and energy across Central America and Mexico. A lot of action along the ITCZ out here in the Atlantic. Some of the models spin off a bit of a wave on that goes to the ocean. I'll talk about that a little bit. And this time of year, we start looking off of Africa. Nothing there right now, but I'm going to show the loop of Africa here in a bit. Water vapor actually shows the circulation of Debbie better than the more traditional enhancements. You can see that broad, really, it's not really an eye, it's a broad center of the storm, 60 to 80 miles, depending on which ellipse you measure it off of, with convective bands out to the east. There was a pretty decent one overnight inland, and maybe some more trying to form in there. So the dry air is kind of trapped now and surrounded by moisture. So maybe a different kind of rain pattern get going. Right now, the heaviest rains are coming into the North Carolina coast today, and we'll be looking at today and tonight for South Carolina, North Carolina, again, being the ones under the gun. Come on. Yeah. Didn't want to go right. Okay, there we go. Okay, that one doesn't want to work. I won't fight it. Okay, this is the latest advisory. Well, I said latest. They haven't updated it on that one. This is the latest advisory at 11 a.m. It's not much different from the previous one. again, Debbie is still just off the coast of the South Carolina. It's going to go over Ed's house here in the overnight hours early tomorrow, very slowly, and then it's going to get grabbed by the westerlies, pulled northward as a depression, and then merge with the front. And while they carry points all the way up into Canada, that's good for peaking when the heaviest rain impact from the remnants will be going forward. The rainfall forecast, this is from today going forward. We're still looking at a fairly large area of 6 to 12 inches of rain in North Carolina, and a couple of pockets of similar rain in the Piedmont to mountainous areas of Virginia. All of that is problematic for any further flooding we might see from that. The amount of rain so far, come on. There we go. This is 3-day total rain, and you can see there are 3 distinct pockets of 10 inches or greater. One down there in southwest Florida. I hope your house didn't flood there, Mark, but we'll be watching the rain. The rain has stopped down there for the most part, other than the normal summer rains. A big area of heavy rain as Debbie made landfall and slowed down across North Florida and extreme southeast Georgia. Another area of very heavy rain occurred the next day there in extreme South Carolina and in the Savannah and inland areas of Georgia. The flood risk that's going forward is quite extensive. Part of it due to already saturated ground from previous rains, both from Debbie down in the Carolinas and from a series of heavy rain producing frontal systems that have gone through the Northeast. Today, the highest risk, of course, is the area down here in the Carolinas, as is tomorrow with our stalled system. And each succeeding day when we're getting this heavy rain, you get a doesn't take very much more rain to jack in the flash flooding. And then we're looking at Friday into Saturday of a wide area of moderate risk up through the mountainous areas of Pennsylvania, New York, and again in northern Vermont, who's had a terrible year for floods. Let's see. River flooding is now becoming another issue. It takes a while for all that water to get in there, but all these that are in purple are in the major flood. Maybe there'll be some approach record flood as time goes on. I haven't had a chance to look at the latest on that, but most of these rivers in the coastal plains of the Carolinas and Georgia are being flooded, and a few river points in Florida that have flood warnings on them also. So it's water has been the deal with this storm, that's for sure. Looking at the outlook, this is that 10% area, and nothing in the 7-day outlook out in the open Atlantic where we're starting to look in the future. That's not to mean nothing will happen. This is the ensemble forecast out through 336 hours on the GFS that's starting to show a few members of that showing some hints of development later on in the period. Not much showing in this area of interest here on the GFS, but certainly the European has a different point of view of a wave coming off of the ITZ there and fueling a storm moving into the open Atlantic. And last but not least, we have a view of Africa. I see one well-defined wave here getting maybe another day or two before it'll come off the coast there, though the models, again, haven't shown anything really big happening with that. And a lot of moisture and convection back here over East Africa, heading towards the west to watch. And we'll keep looking at that every week now for the next couple of months as we go through that. Any questions, guys, on what we're looking at with all the Debbie, et cetera?
I do want to let Hal jump in here and talk about what you're seeing, Hal, where you are in North Carolina, Jacksonville, North Carolina, kind of in the center of this. What are you seeing where you are? And is it what you expected when you went there?
Yeah, great question, Tim. I'm up here in Jacksonville, North Carolina. I'm between Wilmington and Morehead City. The reason I chose this, we were seeing these large convective plumes well off to the east. There was a lot of training rain here. some moderate to heavy rain for 2 to 3 hours this morning. I'm going to turn the camera so you can see what it looks like. We're here in an interesting situation. There are several saltwater bays just to my southeast. I'm along the New River, but Jacksonville is a pretty urban and suburban area with a lot of creeks and a lot of bayous running through it and channels of water. And so the concern is, and to answer your question, first of all, Tim, I've not seen any substantial flooding. I've not seen rivers or creeks out of their banks, but that's the concern as we move forward. You can see there's a large building here with a parking lot and several feet of water rise here. You would definitely be inundating the built environment. So that's the concern here. And keep in mind as well, some of these long duration flood events where we're possibly going to see 12 to 24 or more inches of rain, or 12 to 24 hours of rain for many inches. It's an issue with long duration as far as the rain is going to set in for the next, say, day or two, but then some of the area rivers and creeks may not really crest until this weekend. So sometimes it's hard to picture the long duration of this type of flood event. But this is what it looks like along the New River here in Jacksonville. We've not seen any flooding out of the banks, but it's a concern as we move through today and tomorrow.
Not so much an issue this time around as storm surge pushing in as the water's pushing out there. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the concern is something that we call compound flooding. So right now, the storm surge on the coast is forecast to be 1 to 3 feet here, closer to the South Carolina, North Carolina border, 2 to 4 feet. That's not a big surge. That's not going to devastate or really inundate any coastal buildings. The concern, though, is when you get elevated saltwater for several days, that can raise the saltwater on the coast. It can raise the saltwater also in the bays, and then that can really impede the drainage of all the heavy rain. And that's a concern we have here. Even if the saltwater is just up 2 feet for a day or two, that can impede the drainage of all this heavy rain coming our way.
My biggest concern is you walking on a dock while talking to us. I worry about you.
And, you know, there's bigger concerns than that, Tim, because I realized in my detailed research that little Debbie, that Debbie is really not so little. It's really big. And so if you don't mind me having a powdered donut to add to my distractions here, I did notice in one of the NWS discussions, Debbie was actually spelled Debbie. I was wondering if they were sitting there eating donuts, why they typed that out. But if you don't mind me having a little Debbie, Debbie actually isn't little. As Bill said, the circulation's pretty massive down there.
I wonder if that's what the folks at Colorado State, the Little Debbie donuts this time of year. Hey, Bill, we talk about Colorado State, and they updated their forecast yesterday and backed off by 2 on the total number of storms from 25 to 23. Sounds like basically because July was not as busy as expected, but the rest of the season still expected to be crazy busy. Is that what you saw as well?
Yeah, I don't know why he tweaked it down. It wasn't that clear to me when I read his comments, but the important things, the ACE, the number of hurricanes, number of majors, no significant change, expecting a big season. I saw headlines in my local paper about forecaster reduces his threat forecast for this year, and it's like, oh my God, now what are we going to do?
Everybody stops.
Educate everybody, but yeah. All the key ingredients are not changing. We're in ENSO neutral. The ocean is at near tropical ocean Atlantic is near record warm temperatures. The anomaly has actually gone down a little bit, but part of that is the average temperature is nearing what it would normally peak at, and so without increasing the heat, added heat put into it, you're not going to increase the anomaly. It's going to stay the same.
Things are getting interesting here before much longer. I guess let's get to our guest, Bill. Let's introduce our guest and talk about our sustainable homes and maybe even somewhat hurricane-proof homes.
Yeah, this is we've had a slight shift in gears. If those that saw our ads for this show had Marshall Gobuty doing the interview with us on sustainable homes, but he was unable to make it, and we have. Happy to find out that he's in collaboration with his brother on these projects. So normally Mark would be coming to us from Sarasota, Florida, but apparently he evacuated Debbie to get up into Ontario, where he's originally from. And the basic project they're on, I think it's Pearl Homes, it's called, and the goal is sustainable housing. It's a subject near and dear to my heart because I've lived in many unsustainable houses in my moving around, and I'd love to learn about sustainable ones for the future because I think that's important we go there. So welcome to our show, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Unapologetically, being the younger brother, I have stood in more than once, and it's a pleasure to represent the community that my brother had the vision for, and we've collaborated as a team to build North America's first net zero community. So that from an energy standpoint, and from both sustainability and resilience, there has been nothing created like Hunter's Point that's demonstrated its efficacy, both in stability and also ensuring that the homeowners have their power on during these storms. So it's been a wonderful success so far.
Yeah, I'm sure most of us that are viewing this right now are not all that familiar with the movement towards sustainable, resilient housing. So maybe you could give a little overview of what it is your company has pioneered on doing that, what the goal is with it.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, my brother and his team, they built a community about a dozen years back, about 15 years back. It's called Mirabella. And in order to make a difference, he got to a LEED Platinum status, which is really about efficiency and resource planning and minimizing the footprint. And he did that extraordinarily successfully. It hadn't been done in Manatee County and got a lot of support from the county as well. The next iteration of a project, which we're in now, is Hunter's Point, which is in Cortez, the last authentic fishing village in Florida. And it took this 18 acres in total with the water, but 13-acre property, and brought in professionals, associates I've been dealing with, and they took a look and said, how do we make this a sustainable footprint? So first and foremost, brought in a lot of clean fill. So raising 7 feet, the natural ground and building up. So between the first floor of living and the water level, there's a 19-foot delta. So it was assuring people that flood wouldn't be a concern, but as we move forward and energize the homes through solar and battery capacity, knowing that there's an evolution getting away from fossil fuels and using renewable, sustainable energy. The homes themselves, the calculation was it would produce about as much energy as it consumed to get to that zero line. Through the collaboration with professionals in the community and people that my brother has engaged, we have overachieved. So the house is producing approximately 30% more energy than it consumes. And the benefit with the net metering is we can send that energy back into the grid. It serves a purpose when the grid goes down. We can be essentially a battery for our extended area, and within our community themselves, when there are power outages, it's not as much if anymore. This become a when thing. These homes stay lit, the fridges stay cold, the freezers stay on, and we encourage people, not to have all their utilities on, not to run the oven, to minimize power consumption so the homes can stay cool, dry, comfortable, and lit. And to get there, it was a very big investment. There was a lot of thought leaders coming, and ultimately partnering with the trades, because an idea is an idea, and to execute it and get it done, there are things like hurricane straps and the high tension bolts that really keep everything together. And even the general contractor, who's become a dear friend of the family, he's a gentleman who built the Tampa Devil Rays Stadium. So looking at our footprint and how we were going about the footer, I was like, no, this isn't enough. And he influenced my brother and the engineers to make a wider, deeper footer in order to create that resilience and rigidity. And then we evolve into things like insulation, where the original plan was a combination of spray foam and batten. It was we would achieve the R30 that we wanted, but a spray foam company came to us and said, if we do this and we do that and we change our house from 2x4 to a 2x6, it can completely fill a cavity. That combined with using a zip panel on the outside. So instead of having like a Tyvek wrapped around, it's part of the home in the zip panels. the zip panels combined with this 6 inches of insulation, the R rating went through the roof. The stability and inability for water to penetrate, it became where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And this is an example where 1 + 1 now equals 2.5, as a result of collaboration with trades and people bringing the very best products they could to this. And my brother and his partners, in their wisdom, adjusted the budget to invest in a strong, stable, and eco-conscious home that is outperforming what the original metric was.
That's pretty amazing. Now, what size homes do you build for these?
So there are 3 stories. The first story is the garage level, and that's around 900 some odd square feet. The total home is 1,800 square feet conditioned space, but the livable area with your lanais and patios is 3,300. So a very comfortable space. The community itself has taken on a beautiful shape, as you saw in that previous picture. Even the road having an inverted crown allows the water to flow. So we haven't had any flooding. The investment by my brother and his partners to elevate the land, there has been absolutely nothing. But in a community where we're encouraging people to be eco-conscious and renewable energy, many homeowners have an electric vehicle. So the first storm we had a couple of years ago, a couple of homeowners called and said, "Hey, would you mind coming by and help put my car on blocks?" It's going to be imperfect. God forbid the flood levels do reach a point that it would flood in the garage, which wouldn't affect the home. Probably not the best thing to do. So we provide a service where there's a parking garage downtown. Let's go to the 3rd floor, keep those lithium-ion batteries safe. In the homes that we have the Sonnen battery system, and it's an extraordinary system to reproduce and energize the home. Lithium only. There's no lithium ion, so there's zero risk of that battery catching fire or having a negative impact on the home.
Wow. How does the insurance industry help out? Do they give significant breaks to the homeowners for having resilience?
Very fortunate. It's obviously a big point of interest with home buyers in Florida now, with a lot of the insurance companies raising rates and it being very challenging for people. Hunters Point has done extraordinarily well. The automated flood vents that we have in the garage and their location, the lack of damage that's happened over the last number of storms, and the docks will be completely covered in water, but there's nothing affected any home. So homeowners have done very well, and Hunters Point has been rated very well by the insurance companies. And even though it's a beautiful property in a great location, the insurance rates have not been debilitating at all.
Yeah, that's becoming a more and more important factor. I mean, there's from what I can gather in Florida now, there's getting to be a lot of places where you can't get commercial insurance on the older construction. No one's willing to take it on.
Yeah, the affordability and daily living. So at Hunters Point, you're really going to have no energy bill whatsoever. And so, yes, all those costs go up, but to have a less than expensive home insurance policy, to have literally no energy bill and have a credit, and after you get a year of being an FPL partner, those credits can be used towards the delivery fees that are a fact no matter where you live in Florida. You have a delivery fee. So it becomes a reduced cost considering the area and the proximity to Anna Maria Island and all the amenities that are available. There are a lot of upside and cost reductions that are available for future homeowners.
Yeah, what's the demographic of the folks that are buying into the community?
So pre-pandemic and early pandemic, it was everybody and their dog who could buy a house. It was just everybody was just buying stuff. And as we see now, there are people of our demographic that are looking to retire. There are a few families that have younger kids, but for the most part, we're seeing people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who want a different way of life, want to enjoy the beach, maybe a little bit of retirement. Some are seasonal homes as well, but the community is really building out, seeing a lot of like-minded, like hair color people that are really enjoying a more peaceful way of life and close to the beach, and not in insane traffic all the time.
Yeah. Anna Maria Isle is one of my favorites of the many beaches in Florida. I just love the place.
It is lovely, and with these being new homes, contemporary homes, ones that are very safe, and have again resisted the storms and have absolutely zero damage to the community. As people look forward and have witnessed or have loved ones who have had damage, it recalibrates the thinking as far as where am I going to go next and how am I going to have what is 99% of the people's largest investment they'll ever make in their life in their principal residence, to know that the resilience is there, the stability is there, as well as the forward thinking. And it goes beyond being net zero. The hardy board, the materials that are used to provide a 10-year waterproofing warranty. These are costs that, and many times I tap my brother on the shoulder and said, "Are you sure?" And it really was a commitment to excellence and creating a vessel that is, where people live. And he kept on saying to me, "Mark, this is people's homes. So yes, we could probably do something a little bit less expensive, but people and their families live here. This is what we have to do." And I really admire that sentiment because it's reflected itself in the finished product.
That's fascinating. Given all those extra costs, what's the cost differential for a similar sized unsustainable house that's traditionally built? Do you know?
We think it's probably in around the $20 to $30 a foot. It all depends, like the battery system and the incremental wiring and the things that we need to do within the trusses. The standing seam roof, for example, we had Hurricane Idalia before we had our first inspection, but we had solar panels on the roof. We hadn't closed the house. And so the inspector came and said, "Well, I don't think I need to inspect that because we're after the hurricane and nothing has budged." We went up on the lift and we showed the clips that sit on the standing seam. There's no roof penetrations. And this type of innovation makes a ton of sense and something that was completely foreign to me. But seeing the finished product and living the experience, if you haven't been through a hurricane and coming from where I came from, it was a gobsmacking experience. And I had a lot of faith in what we were doing, but to see the result after and the community where we are versus the surrounding community, because this is a dimension of gentrification, bringing new and contemporary to an old fishing village. And it's outstanding. And the delta and the dry roads where we are and our neighbors, being immersed in water, it is a great validation to the efforts and work and investment that have made at Hunters Point to make it a sustainable, comfortable, and safe place to live.
Interesting. Do you have any visions of how you might scale this up to where you become more than just a local niche industry?
I've been blessed to listen to my brother have many interviews over the last number of years, and I won't forget the very first time he talked about his goal is to have more home builders come and learn and see what we've done. Here's the plans. Here's why we did this. Here's the lesson we learned, for example, in the closed cell foam insulation. And, it sounded sincere, but I really didn't understand. And I have met at least a dozen builders that have come to saying, "How do you do this?" And quite literally an open book. I don't think that we're going to be the people that pioneer this on a national level. We'll certainly continue to do more and do better. But the open invitation to invite other builders to come and do this in their area, we're happy to be a resource. There are no fees. There are no royalties. We've done this because we can. And the lessons we've learned, not everybody else needs to relearn them. We're happy to share them because this is a greater good opportunity. Everybody should have a home that's both environmentally conscious, sustainable, and safe, and something that we're very proud of achieving.
Yeah, I hope we find someone over here that'll take the ball and run with it.
Me too.
Oh, I bet you got some questions, Hal. You're still dry.
Yeah. Mark, I love what y'all are doing there. I had a question in light of Hurricane Beryl last month in Texas. We had 2.7 million people out of power, and I was at a community recovery event, and two people came up to me and said, I actually didn't lose power at all because I have solar, and they were just singing the praises of with solar, they didn't miss a beat. They could keep their refrigerator cool and keep their air conditioning running. So I had two different conversations about this recently. A question I had, I know nationwide, you hear people talk about the South Florida building code and how improvements were made after Hurricane Andrew. As far as positioning panels, but thinking about potentially destructive winds on the roof, are there guidelines or protocols that y'all developed or methodologies to better secure those so that, they can provide power after the storm, but not come down during the storm?
Excellent question. Thank you. So our first inclination was let's make sure we have the panels facing south so we can capture the most energy. And the real innovation came from the standing seam metal roof. To have no roof penetrations but for where the J box is so we can get have everything pre-wired. No, the panel positioning was to optimize the capture of the solar energy, and the metal roof and standing seam innovation with the clips. We didn't invent that, but we adopted it. It is the most expensive way of doing it, but it's the most secure. And it was house number 1, 2, 3. We were into 3 houses at Adalia, and a couple of boys happened pretty quickly. We were really proud of ourselves to be able to do that. But we hadn't experienced homeowners. We did have a model home that the lights stayed on, so I was there taking pictures in the middle of the night. Again, it was one of those validations. Everything made sense on paper, but as I shared earlier, this is one of those outstanding examples where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. The energy capturing, the energy repurposing, even this storm was coming, so we took the entire fleet, which we call the batteries in the homes, and we put everything in backup mode. So when these are really intelligent systems, so we know a storm is coming. If there was clouds, you didn't have your battery charged 100% that day, the system knows it, and it takes energy from the grid, charges your batteries. So if, God forbid, something comes, we lose power, you're at 100%. And the next day, if we still don't have energy, we can still capture energy through the clouds. So we know the fridges and freezers. And with the sub panels we have, the non-critical loads don't exist. So yes, it would be really nice to, turn the toaster on or to run the washer dryer. Don't do that. So we've taken that optionality away to help make the decision-making process easier and allow people, again, to live as sustainable lives within these, beautiful homes and feel safe and have comfort.
Mark, one more question I had. What about windows? I mean, what innovations did you use to make them energy efficient, but also protect them from storms?
I'm so glad you asked that. There's a company that we deal with, PGT Windows. So we love dealing locally. As much as we can deal locally, we can. There are some things that are impossible to do so. But what we have partnered with PGT. First of all, they build a fantastic window. Everything are hurricane windows. Every single window. It's not an optionality. Customers can't come and say, "I would like this. I would like that." Here's the window you're going to get. And I told the story last night to a friend. So our install partners, normally you'll come in, and there's a little wiggle room here and there. They would walk away and say, "No. This needs to be within a 1/16 of an inch tolerance." So call the framers back. So everything fits. There's not shims and just sort of making it work. It's practically a science. That has paid off. And there's a number of times we shook our head. We were behind on deadlines, pay more to get people to come. But by achieving that, create this envelope that has withstood these forces. And, knock on wood, we haven't had leaks or penetrations. And, big thanks to the people at PGT that had a standard like this, and they held us to that standard, and we created a better envelope and dwelling by listening to them and achieving their standards.
Mark, thanks so much for sharing that. That is so inspirational. Hey, Tim, I wanted to pass it back to you. I know sometimes we have some of our online guests that ask questions. Any questions coming online today?
We do have a couple, and I'll get to those. Let me just thank our sponsors. We're halfway through the program, so let's thank all the folks that make these programs possible each and every week. Of course, USAA, Couldn't do it without you, USA. You've been part of us, what we've been doing at the National Tropical Weather Conference from the very beginning. And we appreciate all you do to make these programs a reality, and this program of particular interest probably to the insurance industry. Also, the South Padre Island Convention and Visitors Bureau. Every year we host the National Tropical Weather Conference on South Padre Island. We'll be there again in April of 2025. Be watching for registration information on that. Love to have all of you there in person to join us for that. The Weather Company, Weather Boy, Weather Call, all important parts of the National Tropical Weather Conference and NTWC Plus. We appreciate that. Yes, and Hal, I want to get to your GeoTrek discussion, but I want to ask a couple more questions first, then we'll get to that. I want to take a step backwards because I've never lived in Florida. I don't know exactly where you are. So give us a geography lesson, Mark, on where this neighborhood is, first of all.
So we are in the Sarasota, Brayton, Manatee County area. At the foot of it is a fishing village called Cortez. And there's right from Cortez, there's a lovely bridge that's about to be rebuilt that heads over to Anna Maria Island that connects with Longboat Key and St. Armand Circle, and then not far away from Siesta Key. A lovely, lovely part of the world. Sarasota gives you that big city life, and Bradenton is about to triple in size. And Cortez has remained, it has unique charm and characteristics. And although I do believe that our project will evolve the community for it to be its charming self is perfect for us.
And how big is Hunter's Point? How big is the neighborhood? How many units?
So land-wise, if you take only on the land that we can walk out, we're 13 acres. If you take the entire property that's owned by Hunters Point Community, it's 18 acres. There's a private canal that my brother and his partners and now the homeowners own, and that there's another a boat rental place that's down the street that shares it, but the entire footprint of the community, including the canal, is 18 acres. There's a dry retention pond, and there's a gentleman named Jason Coates, who is a landscape architect and an absolute genius the way he's done things. Not coming from this, he has a very, very close relationship with my brother and a true visionary. And the work that he's done from both a drainage perspective and elevation perspective, how the proximity of the homes and how the water moves, he gets a lot of credit for the success of how high and dry we are, and zero impact so far on the community.
Fascinating. And one more conversation or one more question coming in from one of our viewers, and that's how many homes outside of the community can be sustained during a weather emergency when there's a power outage by the surplus power coming from these homes?
So that's a very good question. The original undertaking for Hunters Point was to be a virtual power plant. And in partnership with Sonnen, there would be a centralized battery bank where homes are able to share. FP&L didn't really want to go down that road, although Tico in Tampa was super interested in it, and we could have had a great partner in there. That being said, each home is individually powered. Each home is producing about 1.3 megawatts a day and consuming 800 to 1,100. So there's approximately 200 kilowatts per home. There's 86 homes right now. We've got 40 of them built. So it's a fair amount of energy being repurposed back into the grid. And the program with FPL is a credit 1-for-1. So there's not an off-peak or an on-peak. There's no super incentive. That being said, kilowatt purchased or used from the grid is credited based on what is put back into the grid. And every homeowner is in a credit position at Hunters Point.
It's amazing. This whole conversation is just fascinating. Let's get back to it in just a second. Hal, you've got a GeoTrek update. Let's do that real quickly, and then we'll get back to some more questions from Mark.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much, Tim. With GeoTrek, we're exploring the world to tell stories about natural disasters and extreme weather not covered by the mainstream media. We just launched our 100th podcast last week featuring Phil Klotzbach and Brian McNulty. It was all about historic Hurricane Beryl and why it was so historic, what that means for the upcoming hurricane season. You can listen to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, any of those platforms. You can check out the GeoTrek podcast. And we're recording podcast interviews this week as well for a podcast launching next Tuesday on Tropical Storm Debbie and Hurricane Debbie that impacted Florida, impacting the Carolinas. But the angle we're taking on that is this concern of Debbie just stalling out. And we've seen a lot of these systems over the past decade just stall out, impacting the coast. For example, Hurricane Harvey in 2017, Hurricane Florence in 2018, Sally in 2020, Tropical Storm Imelda in 2019. But there was a storm that a lot of people forgot about if you were not in South Carolina. This was back 9 years ago in 2015. There was a hurricane called Joaquin that stalled out in the Bahamas, and a plume of moisture just came up into South Carolina for days, producing the worst flooding in recent memory in places like Columbia, South Carolina. I was on the ground there yesterday, just interviewing survivors of that 2015 flood in inland South Carolina that said they were just completely blown away by what happened. They never suspected that much rain. So we've been seeing a lot of these stalling out hurricanes and tropical storms. And to learn a little bit more about the science behind that, I'm interviewing Jim Cosson, a scientific researcher at the University of Wisconsin. We're having an interview this afternoon remotely, and that will air on the GeoTrek podcast next Tuesday. He's done a lot of research on the science behind hurricanes and tropical storms slowing down as they're reaching the coast. And I think that obviously has a big impact for inland flooding. And so something that we'll be having interviews from the ground here. We'll also be obviously providing live coverage here. You can go to GeoTrek or my Hurricane Hal social media pages to follow the updates of what we're documenting here with Tropical Storm Debbie. Again, the big concern with multiple days of inland rain, potential flood impacts, and then we'll bring some science into the podcast as well, again, with that conversation with Jim Cosson. So a lot of stuff going on with GeoTrek. Obviously, we're in the heart of tropical season now, and we try to get out on the ground to not only document the physical impact, but also some of the social science and the societal impacts as well. Thanks a lot, Tim. That's everything going on with GeoTrek.
And of course, if you want to learn more about GeoTrek and Hurricane Hal, Dr. Hal Needham, you can always go to the Houston Chronicle, right? Nice article in the Cron. Was that today? Yesterday?
Yesterday.
I think it was. You know, the reporter, the farmer's market asked if I do outreach. I'll do outreach if I can get one person to listen. I'll do outreach. So I was at the farmer's market in Galveston, and there were so many people impacted by Hurricane Beryl last month that's where I met the two people that got into solar and said how well that did. So all these community things tie together, but the Houston Chronicle did run an article, I believe, yesterday or today about the work we're doing there in Galveston.
We'll see if we put that link on the site so folks can read about that and learn more about what you're doing and all the work that you're doing beyond what we do here in GeoTrek. So much going on. Bill, jump back in. We've been kind of hogging up the conversation for a while. Bill Reed.
Okay. Gosh, I wrote down so much stuff I can't read my writing. But anyway, Mark, one of the things that I usually get asked about any kind of a better resilient idea is what's the windstorm rating for your houses?
I apologize. I'm not. It escapes me right now. I know that we have withstood 115 mile per hour winds, but from the rating, I don't want to make something up and mislead you.
Okay. Yeah. I might follow up with your brother on that with an email because I am curious about that. I'm sure it's very good because I know their codes down there are higher than 115. They're probably either 130 or 140. I
believe I have 115 in my head, but that may have been Adalia, the clocked wind velocity that we had. But again, I just don't want to pass on misinformation. So I'm sorry I don't have that answer for you.
No problem. The other thing I've been thinking about as you describe all the functions that go into this house is I would think the long-term maintenance costs, something most homeowners do not take into consideration when they buy, would be considerably lower. I mean, for example, the roof, your metal roof is going to last at least twice as long as a traditional shingle roof, for just one example. The hurricane windows, I've researched them a bit, and they're pretty much warranted for twice what a standard window is. The better insulation and all that, it just seems like it keeps adding up to be a much lower maintenance issue. Is that something you guys are considering when you tell people about the projects?
Very much so. First of all, thank you all for what you do. There's so much unknown when it comes to weather. So providing people information and with knowledge that you have is really great and beneficial to people like myself. As far as the home is concerned, I give my brother and his partners and the people that were associated in the ideation of the building. They built an innovation center. They went and did stuff before they went all the way to Bright. So the decking I was talking before is called DuraDeck, and it's extraordinarily popular in Florida and very, very, very expensive. But it has a 10-year waterproof warranty. All the railings, those are aluminum railings that meet all the codes and standards, but they're not going to rust out. And even the perfect stainless steel screws that we had imported, they were rusting. So we found other ones, and the perfection is impossible. But raising the bar ourselves consistently, working with a company like Sonnen, there are a lot of energy companies to work with, but working with Sonnen, they have a 20-year warranty on their batteries. Their service and performance and communication with customers is outstanding. The people that install their solar panels are a really wonderful local company that has a vested interest in working more. The additional support that they provide to the customers that were, they're homeowners, but they're no longer our customers, they're within our community. But we're aligned with people that genuinely care, that are adding value and working with people every day to take the mystery out of this new technology. So it's both comforting, affordable, and the magic potion. We're dispelling myths and making it easy to enjoy this lifestyle where you don't have to be an actuary to figure it out. You can just literally look on the app, ask some questions, and if you don't know the answer, we have partners that are there to support you. And to your point about the windows and the materials, the insulation, all of those things came because my brother produced a collaborative environment to work in. I've been at other construction sites, and besides a lot of F-bombs and stuff flying around and get it done, we had timetables, we had commitments to homeowners. A lot of people were counting on us to deliver a home on time, but there was absolutely no wiggle room to compromise quality and integrity of the home. And if we had to buy another week, we got another week to make a home that we could be proud to live in ourselves. And obviously the people that are living there now, we didn't spare both a dollar or an effort. Everything was completely laid out for us.
Yeah. And I think when you first talked about it for the, I think it was probably Hurricane Ian that you had to move all the cars, because that's where we were forecasting a tremendous storm surge, and you were too close to where landfall was going to be to take a chance. How did you manage a deal where everyone could park in a high-rise parking garage? That's kind of what my scheme would be if I still lived in the surge zone, would be move the $60,000 worth of vehicles into a garage.
So I'm not going to give myself any credit, because the first call I got, I went, well, let's go find some blocks. Called, as a matter of fact, it was Jason Coates, because I was trying to, is there really risk of water reaching a certain level? And him being local and native, he's like, yes, no, do not do that. Do not do that. Help people, and let's go down. So I called the parking lot, and we were only 12 houses at that point, so I didn't have to take the whole community, but did reach out to everybody and say, here's what we're going to do. And 3 of us took minivans and brought, I think, 14 people back. And it's a lesson learned, because this is new. This evolution of reusable energy that's in our home, purpose throughout our home, the vehicles that we drive, and also knowing that not all batteries are the same. So the pure lithium batteries that are in the home, that is intended for safety, and there's no discrediting of anything to do with electric vehicles. I own one, I love it, but I also recognize that it's not this thing that I park in the garage when there's risk of a flood. And that took a little bit of learning, and it's not in the consumer consciousness. So be able to do that and come up with a solution. It's not the most convenient thing, but yes, we're going to protect your asset, protect your home, and protect your life to the best of our ability.
Got an idea for you. If you come up with a future development, build you a parking garage that can house all the cars, but when you don't need it for a storm, make it pickleball courts or anything recreational. So there's bedtime. I'm serious. I think that's you brought up a very valid concern about the electric vehicles. They make a lot of sense. but you don't want to make them unsafe in your house. So it seemed like if you had it right there in the community, problem solved.
Agreed. Unfortunately, we can't go subterranean, given logistically where we are. But to go up a couple of levels and have pickleball or something else on top, absolutely, it's a very good idea. And one of when I first joined my brother and we were talking about things, there were a number of solutions, but this wasn't one of them. We had to experience, and then have people with those vehicles and living in a home come up with a question that we're able to find a solution to. And that was really the entire building process is why they did an R&D center. They flushed out things where that's where the partnership with PGT came. That was long before I showed up. It was having somebody that's dedicated and commitment to that envelope of integrity around the home and assuring these homeowners that they would be safe and in a sustainable home. And the investment in innovation by my brother and his partners has, really come home and paid off well.
Yeah, I think you said when you built you started the development, you raised the base elevation to 19 feet. Was that correct?
Yeah. So from the the code is 11. Mm-hmm. So from adding 7 feet and then where in the garage the first electrical outlet is, obviously GFI, that's a 19-foot delta. So when I think it was last year sometime where we were looking at a king tide with a full moon and water, we looked at 8 to 12 feet and dry, no problem. So again, but it's an extraordinary investment to add fill and compact it and put it the ways that you want it. And again, I as an investor, as a developer, I don't know that I would have had the foresight or the capacity to do what my brother and his partners did. I'm really glad to be a part of it. But the vision that they had and investments that they've made have made this a sustainable, safe community to live in.
Yeah, the other alternatives down there seem to be put the houses on stilts, which add a whole nother complication of cost.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hal, what you got?
All this talk about moving cars up in garages, it reminds me of Hurricane Harvey in 2017 when I moved my car up to that garage in Lake City and parked between your Corvette and Ferrari, Bill. I mean, I appreciate you leaving me the space there. Hey, Mark, I had one last question for you. So if someone wanted to purchase one of these homes, are they all identical? Are there different options? Can there be like customized design like online, or how does that work as far as actually applying it to people's purchase?
Excellent question. Thank you for that. So the original was, yes, come please. You want a 2-bedroom, want a 3-bedroom? COVID came, so optionality went out the window. It was hard enough just to build them. It was hard enough to get people that were committed to the process because not everybody is going to do things the way we've done them. So optionality is limited. The footprints are identical. We have a left and a right. The interior homes obviously aren't the ones that are on the canal that have the decks and docks, but the footprint itself is common in the home. And I believe with a more relaxed atmosphere and not being in COVID, everything is possible with respect to the homes and buyers' desires of what we could accomplish.
Mark, you mentioned how high that y'all are way above the required floodplain. So it seems like very unlikely that floodwater would get up that high. I've talked to people that live along the Gulf Coast say, well, not only do they want to build things high, but maybe change some materials around, not only consider flooding, but also mold from the high humidity. Are there any adaptations there to help make these homes a little more resilient to mold and high humidity as well?
Yeah, so absolutely. That's another partner that we had. So starting both with the footer and the cinder block and going to a completely all-filled cell. So creating that rigidity, and there's a unique tie beam that integrates the block and then the wood structure on top with the hurricane strapping and the anchor bolts. And that the integrity of the building will allow it to turn and come back in these high intense wind situations. And yes, all the paint. So we partnered with Sherwin-Williams for an absolute reason. There's a lot of very good paint companies out there. Sherwin-Williams came to us with mold resistant, zero VOC interior and exterior paints. So again, from a lifestyle perspective, from having no volatile organic compounds anywhere and having that mold resistance. And again, when you go to a closed cell foam versus an open cell foam, that's 20% more. And if you go from the open cell foam to the batten, that's 40% more. So a calculated investment to have an environment that is going to be resilient, and also the panels themselves on top of the hardy board. It's a very conscious, thoughtful build that will keep everybody dry and mitigate risk of mold. There's no such thing as absolute proof, but every step has been taken, including the finishing, to ensure that mold, if it is going to happen, is going to be captured and resisted.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate that.
Yeah, good. Couple of good questions coming in from online as we get to the top of the hour. One, what's the completion date for Hunters Point? And two, what other amenities does the neighborhood offer?
Oh, great question. So we expect we'll be done in about another 14 months with respect to the pace. We build based on people buying. We don't build on spec and build that they will come. So the amenities, there is a massive, beautiful pool going in with a clubhouse and fitness center. On a bi-weekly basis, we are inviting food trucks to come and have themed type events. We're talking with a couple of beach clubs to provide member access. So there's reciprocity where people can go and enjoy the beach amenities. But with respect to the HOA itself, what we have is the outstanding private canal that gets you access to the bay, and then off you go and enjoy all the beautiful water and beaches, as well as a magnificent pool that will also have a tiki hut and a lot of different amenities so families can come and enjoy as well as work out and hit the patio bar.
If anybody's in the neighborhood, is there a model home they can see?
Yes, thank you for asking. There's a model home, and we have Roger Pettigrew and Caldwell Banker as our real estate partners. They're manning the site every day of the week. Very professional in their approach. And if our site isn't for somebody, there's going to be other recommendations, a great lease back program. So there's a lot of things that we offer. If people want to come, they can see the full home in entirety. Matter of fact, we have two model homes now, again, very similar, one left, one right, but gives people a different perspective based on location within the community of what might be right for them.
Website? Do you have a website people can look at if they're not in the neighborhood and want to learn more?
Thank you for asking. Yes, it's hunterspointfl.com. That's HUNTERSPOINT.FL.com.
Fascinating conversation, Mark. Thank you so much for being with us today. Let me let Hal jump in with the final thought. Hal, anything else you want to add?
Mark, just really appreciate it. I mean, I could see this really scaling and being very interesting for people in disaster-prone communities, not just in Florida, but well beyond. Appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thank you very much for having us. On behalf of my brother and the entire community at Hunters Point, thank you again for what you do, reaching out to professionals and looking forward to what may impact our lives. I appreciate your expertise and you sharing with everybody.
Thank you. And Bill, what did we learn today?
Well, I learned I got a lot more questions. In fact, what I'm going to probably do now is get a rental car when I go to the Flash conference at Clearwater Beach and scoot on down and see this place. I got to see things. I can read all I want and I don't get it. But when I see something, it's, aha, now I get it kind of thinking. So I look forward to visiting with you and your brother and the folks.
Yeah, please come visit. We always have something in construction and you can see the evolution and some of the aha moments that we've had. And I could go on and on and on about the integrity of the home. We're very proud of what we've accomplished.
Should be.
Terrific.
Thank you.
And I have a brother in Dunedin. The next time I visit him, we're going to come down and see it as well. So fascinating.
Excellent.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much. And Hal, Bill, great program again today. We appreciate you guys. As always, we appreciate our sponsors who make these programs a reality. Without them, we would not be here. USAA, the South Padre Island Convention and Visitors Bureau, Weather Boy, the Weather Company, Weather Call, all parts of this program. That wraps it up for today. We appreciate everything. Those of you who are in the path of Debbie, please stay safe over there. Hal, be careful walking on the dock with your little Debbies. We appreciate you taking time to be with us today as well. That's it. We'll see you again next week for NTWC Plus. Take care.
partnering with people, but